All right, ready? Each of you is leading work that is challenging traditional thinking. What was the moment that made you realize we needed to take a different approach to crime and violence prevention?
Come on, do your rant from LinkedIn.
Which one?
Right. Right.
I think for me it was that the moment that I realized that there was no people with lived experience in these spaces actually doing any of the work. It was more a prescriptive measure. And so when I speak sometimes I'll say, like, if you get in the car and you buckle your seatbelt, you're probably not the best person to talk about violent crime, right? Because you are safety conscious. And so
That's good.
it is one thing to have academics or scholarly knowledge. It's another thing to have like real relevant experience. And so we have this habit of taking people who have a bunch of degrees or who have, published papers or been a scholarly person, and they come up with these prescriptive measures to give to people, but they have no actual lived experience. If you wanted to know why somebody committed a crime, ask people who commit crimes, right? Just like if there's something wrong with your car, if there's a rattling noise, you're gonna ask a mechanic, you're not gonna go ask a dentist. And so I noticed that throughout, the time that I've been in this space, that those who we would call subject matter experts in any other industry are the people who are overlooked and not utilized in this particular space.
That's good. That's good. Post incarceration for me, understanding the power of what cognitive behavior modification does, and then coming home and seeing that the only people that were delivering this modality that I felt like changed me at a very high degree was only being taught by people that were with the justice system. And I felt like for it to be relevant, it had to come from somebody that had that lived experience. So I think me coming home from prison and then me also being a CEO is completely different than most CVI modalities, because most CVI organizations are ran by people that haven't been, but they employ, credible messengers, and they understand the value of them. But how much different would it be if the organizational culture or the construct was designed in cultural competency also? So seeing that there was a gap in that area elevated me into some rooms that gave me, some opportunities to become a thought leader. And that opportunity kind of like carved out, what Lyrics is today.
So we talk a lot about innovation. The context of this conversation, I wanted to talk about innovation. I want to kind of set the stage for what I mean by that. And I think Kyle's heard me talk about this a lot. I'm very clear about the difference between invention and innovation. Invention is new. Innovation is actually taking old things and putting them to new uses, right?
That's good.
So when you think about innovation in your domain right now and how innovation can impact this issue and this real world on the ground experience, how do you think about that in the work that you do? Like, how do you think about how innovation can possibly impact what we're trying to achieve here?
Really, it's kind of the philosophy of what you do here with the ecosystem building. I don't think that nonprofit really thinks ecosystem as much as they think solve the problem, right? The ecosystem building is not, I want to put multiple organizations into one building. I want to put the right organizations that streamline into each other. That way we create a formula or a opportunity for a person to go from one thing to the next with purpose. And that's something that I feel like is desperately needed in the non-for-profit space, is the ecosystem building component, right? I know a lot of people often say that non-for-profit is just a tax code, but it's also a culture, right? Like, it's a culture of people that love, that care. That doesn't mean that they're business owners, right? People that love and care. I'm just thinking about the Plex Pod in 39th and Park. It's a totally different feel from Plex Pod in 39th and Park. And I'm not saying one culture is different or better than the other, but I'm saying that they're completely different. And because of that, I think where the innovation happens at is when we closely merge those two together and take away some of the not-for-profit ideology and take away some of the business ideology and then create something. A lot of times when we think innovation is, I'm just gonna take my organization and this organization, I'm gonna put it together. But that's adjacent, that's an environment, that's not an ecosystem, you know what I mean? Ecosystems flourish together, they evolve, they grow, they manipulate, and they become something else. Innovation is truly about two things becoming a completely different thing. And that's what needs to be infused into the nonprofit space as far as public safety and violence prevention. That's my opinion.
No, that's good. I mean, I did get an A- in intervention in college. But like innovative, like what we're doing at municipal court with the right community partners to elevate, to solve the problem in a holistic manner is innovative because people aren't doing that, right? Like we talk about what community is and what it looks like to have this collaboration, but it's really all talk and not much action nor collaboration. And then secondly, so I was the program manager at UMKC School of Law when we ran the expungement clinic, and actually using innovation like large language models to help with like expungement. And so we've developed pieces of technology for people who go through the expungement process to be able to do a pro se expungement, which means they can go home and do it themselves, or they can utilize AI to even see if they're eligible. I'm actually working with someone right now to build one for reentry, and they're working on an AI generated model for reentry, because Kyle is right. Like when you start telling people like, hey, I don't do that, go over there. We don't do that. You have to go, you lose people, right? And so it would be great to either have something like we have at municipal court, and for for people who are not participating in that, to be able to go home and put in your situation, and then be able to, if you got a microphone and some speakers, be able to talk to the AI specifically built for your particular problems. And so we have to provide innovative solutions in this time frame, because we do get stuck doing the same old thing over. Yes, my rant on LinkedIn. We do the same things over and over and somehow expect a different result. So we have to come in and be innovators in the space. We have to come in and be disruptors, much like Netflix was a disruptor, or much like Lyft or Amazon was a disruptor in their spaces. We have to come in and be innovative and be disruptors in this space. We all know mass incarceration doesn't work. There's no direct correlation between mass incarceration and crime, right? And so we have to be innovative in our solutions, specifically now, to say, hey, let's utilize technology to help people. Let's really build coalitions of like-minded people who actually work together to solve these particular problems. And that may not sound new. Like someone could be listening and say, well, Kyle, like, don't we do that? No, we don't. We really don't. So we have to continue to be innovative in our space. And it probably means a little bit more to me and Kyle because we come from an environment in which often people are talking about, but we're not at the table.
Right. So like I hear a lot of times people say that what we do, there's a thin line between the work that we do and then what's best practice, right? There's a thin line. I mean, but the Grand Canyon looks like a thin line from space. You know what I mean?
Right.
But once you get up on it and you understand it with vitality, you know what I'm saying? It's like, oh, this is a chasm. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, this isn't the same. And I think the work that we do, we're bringing light, or we're bringing the 30,000 foot view straight down to like eye level. You know what I mean? Like, oh, these best practices are best practice for this culture, not this culture. You know what I mean? And it takes people to be able to become articulate from the trauma to be able to articulate the trauma to those that can make the policies and procedures though, right? So people look at me and you and they'll be like, oh, look, they made it out, but they don't understand we're anomalies to the masses of what the problem is though, right? So I think the innovation that we bring to this is not only the work that we do and how we strategize the work, but our courageousness to push against the hard line and push against the norms that have been put in place for years and years and years and still be able to stand without being burnt out because of people's public opinion. You know what I mean? Courageous, there's no way to be innovative without courageous conversation or courageous heart, courageous thought process, courageous mentality. Like, you won't innovate because everybody's going to tell you that you're wrong or you're stupid or you don't get it, because that's the heartbeat of what innovation is though. You know what I mean? It's going to be different. And I love what Kramer said, you know, he says change has got to be hard because it's new. Anything new has to create fear, you know what I mean? And if you're not fearful about the thing that you're going to create, then it may not be innovation, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I always tell people the greatest disruptors in history at one point were all called crazy.
Yeah,
exactly.
They were all called crazy or told it wasn't going to work or that's not how it's going to happen.
Right. When you say the world is round, oh my
He was a
God.
witch. He was a witch.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
a witch.
Like you'll die for
innovation.
for innovation, and that's one of the things that, you know, for us in particular, who again have been through these experiences, it's really having these courageous conversations, sometimes being able to stand alone in a room and say these things because, you know, they're absolutely correct. And you have to push against the norm for people to understand that. And it's very unfortunate because it makes it very difficult to get funding. It makes it very difficult to build relationships. It makes it very difficult to help the people that need it the most. We always talk about the 1%, and then 1%, normal America understands that as we're talking about the 1% of the wealth, but there's the 1% of the people who are out here who people are talking about who are never in the room, and yet these are the people that we continually focus on. And so it becomes one of these things to where we have to be courageous in what it is that we're doing. We have to have the intestinal fortitude to stand up in the face of adversity. We have to enter in these spaces where people will say, well, you're this and you're that, and you don't have the education and that, and be able to push forward. Even that in itself is innovative because normally people shy away from that. Normally people don't want to. I talk to guys all the time and they say, Johnny, I can't do what you do. And I'm like, I'm doing this for you. This is why I do this, because if we don't have a voice, if we can't speak for our population, then who's going to speak for us?
So let me ask you about that, because I mean, how do you engage individuals in the co-creation of of the solutions and the answers versus them feeling like they're recipients of a program, right? They're like it's happening to them or they're being talked about versus co-creating alongside you, you know, and the importance of lived experience, right? That importance of truly understanding the problem. How do you engage individuals to feel like they're empowered or that they have the opportunity to be a part of the answer at this point?
Yeah, I'm gonna let Kyle answer first because he do it every day.
So are we talking about the participants or the businesses that I partner with?
Oh, I think those that are, I think of it more broadly as those impacted or those, those impacted by the issues, you know, whether it be crime, violence, you know, whatever those things are. How do you engage those individuals to feel like they're part of the answer and part of the co-creation opportunity? So I think that's a challenge, right? So Johnny's talking about like that's where we need more engagement and we need those people in the room. Is it voices like yours, or is there an opportunity to bring more of those voices in, and how do you do that in a way that's meaningful?
For me, the reason I'm hesitant to answer is because there's so many different buckets of people that I have to engage, so I have to engage everybody different, right? Like my political space is different than my community partner space and my organizational space or my grassroots organizational space or my student space or even my staff space. Like everybody's a collaborator in my space because that's just my style of leadership, though, right? So I'm just gonna pick two for the sake of for the conversation, and one is gonna and then my donor space or
Sure.
my like
It's very different.
they're so different. So I'm just gonna speak to my partner space because I have a partner in the room. What I've learned in this, as far as innovation is, I don't need to do what my partners are doing. I don't need to hire somebody and then they come in, they do a great job for me, and then I'm gonna steal all of their best practices and I'm gonna create their best practices because financially it's easier to manage when it's in-house though, right? So honestly, what I feel like is, because before I partner with a conglomerate, I'm a partner with a grassroots organization or a grassroots person that has the heart to do it. And what happens is majority of people are all passion, majority of people in nonprofit, they're more passion than paperwork, and they really just want to serve, right? So in my innovative thought process is, then just serve. And then what I'll do is, I'll figure out where these grants are gonna come from. Let's talk about pre and post tests, or let's use my credentials and my notoriety and the things that I have, please use it. Like, go get grants with it, go do those things with it, and we're gonna do the paperwork, we're gonna be the fiscal sponsor, we're gonna do all of that, because I just want you to focus on the passion part of it. And then what you won't know is, I'm setting this up, I'm talking about you in these rooms, positioning you to be able to be the next WeCode or the next whatever, right? So you say, how do we collaborate? I'm gonna be honest with you, and this is just me as a leader and what I've learned in this, everybody's not gonna understand where you're taking them, so sometimes you might not have to tell them why you're taking them there though, right? I think my job as a CEO and a community leader is to make sure that people are walking away with their deliverables and a paycheck. If I can get them to walk away with that deliverable and that paycheck, it is my responsibility. It's not my partner's responsibility for me to utilize the data and the assets from what they did. That's my responsibility. I'm not gonna ask you to do that. So because I'm moving like that, I don't have to sit in a room and give my strategic plan away to a partner. I don't have to do all of that. I just need to figure out where we fit in this area and maximize that the best as possible. I don't believe in having 100 roundtable discussions to keep talking about what we should do. In my mind, I don't even feel like I should be asking people that don't know what to do. You know what I'm saying? I believe I should take input, get data, get quality information, but in the end, if I'm gonna say I'm a leader, I'm gonna have to reason that information and make the decision. And I feel like sometimes leaders are so people-pleasing that they're too scared to say, this is what you should do, and deal with the pushback from it. Because what happens is—
Those aren't leaders, man. Let's just be clear, those aren't leaders.
But I know, but just because people have LLCs, they think they're leaders and bosses.
Yeah,
you know
that's
what I'm
fact.
saying? And that doesn't qualify you as a leader or a boss. It just says you have a tax status. So I honestly feel that at some point we have to make decisions for people and fall on the sword if it's good and walk with the reef if it's great. You know what I'm saying? But either way it goes, you have to make a decision, and that's what real leaders and innovators do. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, and so I'll speak to, because it was my experience, and and I'll share this story. Like when I first went to college and the university was doing something, I went to Rockhurst University way too many times, and I'm going back. And so someone had to remind me that students have power. And so I go out and I'm just gonna focus on the guys that I see and work with who tell me, like, it doesn't matter, I can't do what you do, and they have this, and it's almost like a hopeless mentality. And so I try to say that you are valuable. Your opinion is valuable. And Cal used something earlier of this idea that we are anomalies, and that is true, although I try to reinforce the fact that if you do some things, you can be just like us, right? It doesn't have to be, and if we can create an army of Johnnies and Cals and other people out here, like, we can really shift the landscape. And so I really try to make people feel comfortable as possible, because I think even when we talk about things like voter engagement, I really think people believe that it just doesn't matter. Like, and if you have a criminal conviction, let's just be honest, if you're black and have a criminal conviction and you out here, you really feel like you don't matter. Like the world has shut you out. And so we have to instill hope in these individuals to say, no, you do matter. You are a person. Somebody loves you, whether that's your mom or your kids or whoever that is, and your voice matters. And you have to be vulnerable, and you have to show people love. Like you can't, people, the world is a tough place, right? And once you get these stigmas, or people want to call them scarlet letters or whatever that looks like, it becomes very difficult for you to feel like you really matter in the grand scheme of things. And so we have to show people like you matter. Your family matters, your kids matter, your opinion matters, what you think matters, how you feel matters. And we just so happen to have a platform to where we can convey those messages out to a broader audience, because they're not able to sit in these meetings or be able to put input into some of these plans. Because I think what you said was earlier is correct. We are very prescriptive. We'll say, hey, this is what you need. And you could need a grocery store, and somebody will tell you need a gas station. And you sitting there like, wait a minute, we don't need a gas station. Gas stations down. Yeah, and we continue to do that over and over. And so we have to be very cognizant of, me and Kyle's role. We have to be cognizant because we're in positions that other people, like some of my partners, will never be in these roles, just to be honest. They're just never gonna they're never gonna run organizations. They're never gonna, but we understand their pain because we talk to them. Like, you're my friend, I talk to you, and they're able to convey in this sense of vulnerability what it is that they're going through. And I think it's incumbent upon us to take that information, like Kyle said, you take this information, and then we have to make decisions depending on what kind of leadership we are, whether that's servant leadership or whatever that leadership look like. And then we go into these rooms and we convey the messages from the people who have these particular experiences.
I think this is how innovation happens, though, because the dichotomy between what he's saying and what I'm saying is your voice matters. Everybody's opinion matters in the room. I think that's very, very true, right? But I think where the dichotomy happens between what me and him are saying, and this is why me and him work so well together, because we're very passionate about the work that we do, but there's a thin line, you know what I'm saying, that splits what we believe. And as my brother says, every opinion matters. I feel like only reason our opinion matters is because we put legs to our opinion, right? We built our opinion. Me and you sit here because we decided to do something different than just say our opinion. You know what I'm saying? And because we chose to do something than just say our opinion, now we get to speak for the people that just tell us what their opinions are, right? And opinions aren't always given in solutions. Opinions are people complaining about a problem. You know what I mean? And where the anomaly piece comes in, that for me, and I don't want to, when I say anomaly, I said this one time when I was at a federal conference, and the guy pulled me to the side. He was like, I think that's pretty cool that you goated yourself. I'm not goading anything. Right. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying I'm the greatest at anything. What I'm saying is I have an ability to reason. And every attribute or gift that I have in the public safety or violence prevention space means that I'm a greater servant. You know what I mean? The better I am at something, or the higher that me and Johnny get in position, is because we serve more. We sacrifice more. We're willing to give up more. We're willing to go places where people aren't ready to go. And that's what gives us our opinion. That's what gives our opinion validity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, my dad used to say every problem's worth a dime, every answer's worth $1. You know, like it's easy to have the opinion, but you guys are doing the work. You guys are doing the legwork to come up with the answers.
And that's why Johnny Waller doesn't have a title. His title is Johnny Waller.
His title is Johnny Waller.
Oh my God.
He put the work in.
I did. Yeah, I put the word together.
We had to get that on tape somehow.
No, it's all good.
Yeah,
It's all
yeah, yeah.
good.
So, Kyle, you said the word grassroots a minute ago. I want to dive into that one because part of what you see as a disconnect here, part of what I guess I feel as an outsider to this in many ways is there's this disconnect between grassroots efforts and individuals and organizations that are close to the ground, close to the issues, close to the and the institutional systems that need to change or that might be most impacting the situation. What are you guys doing to bridge that gap? I mean, I hear some people use phrases like, you have to be code switching. You have to be able to do this in a room and do this in a room and do this in a room and some of those types of things. How do you guys tackle or think about this issue, this disconnect, right, between the ground and the system?
I think you named it. You called it the code switch. I think the biggest issue that grassroots organizations are having is that we're not code switching the data. We're not. So everything that I do, let's be very clear. Before 1 + 1 = 2 and made you a genius, if you knew how to start a fire and kill an animal, you were the man. You know what I'm saying? Like you were that guy. You know what I'm saying? So if we break down the educational construct from it and just say, is this civilization able to raise their own people? Like, were we doing that before there was a typewriter? Were we doing that before it was AI? Were we doing that before Google? And if that is true, then that means that there's solutions that are there. So the fact is, we're using these solutions, we're not using the terminology that best practices use. So what we ended up having to do with my organization was I partnered with UMKC, the nonviolence, the data team for the 30 million that came down the line. And when they came in, they wanted, the big fear that a lot of the organizations were fearing was that they were going to be scrutinized and judged, and they were going to have these people, these overseers that were going to just be over their shoulders looking at what they're doing. I didn't go into it with that mentality. I went into it with, you need to make your data match what I'm saying works. And that's how we're going to create this narrative moving forward. So what Dr. Amaya did was she took the best practices and then allowed me to look at what they consider best practices and change the language to fit my pre and post test. And now my pre and post test tells the story that I needed to tell, and she code switches it to make it best practice, the language of best practice. You know what I'm saying? And now we have this new data set that's saying that lyrics is really performative, right? Not because I'm changing the way that the data needs to be, the power of the data is in the person that writes the data, but I'm not the one writing it, right? I'm using what the federal standards say is best practice under resiliency. I'm using best practice under case management supports and stuff like that. But, and to give you an example, so I got two guys. So in my program, they're coming in with their guns, right? Backpacks. If they got backpacks and their sweatpants are hanging low, they're active, right? They got guns. So if I have two people that when they started the program, whenever they had issues, they will argue, but they will put their hands in their what's the names, or they put their hoods on, or their clothes off, or they'll use rhetoric like, "Oh, my dead homie," they'll use this rhetoric. But then 3 months into the program, they're having a heated argument, but they're still in their chair and they're still doing those things. You know what I'm saying? That's social and emotional intelligence. Now I have an awareness that, yeah, I'm upset, but I can have that same angry conversation, but I can have it in a relaxed way because I'm not allowing my emotion to dictate my action. You know what I'm saying? That's a data point. So how do we prove that when nobody cares about me? Like he didn't put his hood on. Ooh, great. You know what I mean? Check. You know what I mean? And I say this, and this is my punchline is like, if we keep considering resources, access to resources, education, and financial support is the thing that's going to change systemic poverty, right? Or violence or criminality. I mean, keep it real, Jeffrey Dahmer did all of that. You know what I mean? So that doesn't qualify change. What is qualifying change in the demographic that we're serving? Who's saying this is producing something else, right? Or creating something else? Everybody don't want a $300,000 house. That's just not what they're not that concerned. They're more concerned about, am I gonna be able to provide for my kid? Mm-hmm. And you know what I mean? Am I gonna do those things? So if that's the case, then the measure has to be different. So I'm long-winded in this because I'm really passionate about this, because grassroots organizations do not have to feel like they're not meeting the mark because they're not collecting data the way that the infrastructure creates the data. I need not grassroots organizations to understand that they have the power to say, this is how we collect data, and this is what I feel like is going to move the needle. So one of our key components in our data set is the person that put you in prison or to put you in ISS or suspended you, are they for you or against you, right? If a criminal, this is what makes criminality. If I get caught with a pack of dope, right? I get caught with an onion, a crack, and the police officer pulls it out of my pocket, and I look him dead in his eye and say, you put that there, I am very high on the criminality scale, right? Because the average mind wants to be corrected, right? Because the average mind wants to learn. That's just the way that the chemical construct is, right? So if I'm willing to tell you that, gaslight you and look you dead in your face and tell you that you're crazy because you pulled dope out of my pocket, my criminality level is extremely high though, right? So when we transition out of criminality and we go into violence, violence says that I believe that I'm so much right that I can now kill you to get my way. You know what I mean?
Justifiably.
Justifiable. So when I can justify my negative intent to a high degree to where now I can justify why it's okay for me to murder you for stepping on my shoe, now we're in a different culture, right? We're in a different thought process. So how do we say that I'm about to return this person, because this is what the justice system says though, right? The justice system is set up for rehabilitation, right? Rehabilitation is returning somebody back to what they originally were, right? If they were, I don't even got it. It's how, you know what I'm saying? I'm already trapped in this criminality thought process though, right? So really what you need to do is you need to take me to something else. That's habilitation. You know what I'm saying? So how do we tell the conglomerate that says, listen, if you don't follow these constructs of our societal norm, and the way that we keep our societal norm normal is removing you, right? But what they don't know is when you remove me from societal norm and put me in a different societal norm, all I'm gonna do is adapt to the next societal norm. So now prison is college. So now I went to college to be worse than what you thought me were, and then you're gonna reintroduce me back into society and think that I'm gonna be anything different than that? That's insane, you know what I mean? That's expecting different results with the same measures though, right?
We have a word for that.
Yeah.
Insanity. Right.
Or let's innovate, right? Let's innovate and accept that violence is the cry of the unjust, you know what I mean? Anytime, you can't fix trauma with more trauma. It's just like, trauma is the lack of love, so we're gonna add more lack of love? Like, the mathematics don't math, you know what I'm saying? So how do I love well? Well, I'm stuck in criminality. Why do you got the pack of dope? Well, I can't feed my family, and as a man, I feel like it's important to feed my family. Well, here, let me go ahead and give you $500 for the month. Go ahead and knock that thing out. What's the next issue? Oh, I want sustainable income. Okay, so to get sustainable income, you need these things. So when I went to prison, what they told me was they took college out of prison because they felt like people that had committed crimes were getting free education, while people that stayed out and didn't commit those crimes had to pay thousands of dollars for that education. You don't understand the construct. You know what I'm saying? Like, you really don't want them to be rehabilitated or habilitated. You really just want them to return back to what they are. And you're saying what you want. You want them to go back to what they originally were. So tell me this, if I could grow potatoes and sell potatoes, that would be a sustainable income. Well, what you don't realize, because you're not from the culture, is crack cocaine is a natural resource to a drug, to a person in poverty, because I can go to my people, I can go to my resources and create this thing. Until we start realizing that thought process is leading how criminality and violence continues to perpetuate itself, then you will never really understand that for violence and criminality to survive, this violence and criminality has to grow, it has to get smarter. So violence and criminality is an organism that is growing smarter and brilliant every day though, right? Once you wrap your mind around that philosophy, you cannot continue to apply the same measures that you applied last year or 6 months ago. You have to have consistent innovation. So how do we do that though, right? We have to continue to train people that are stuck in poverty, stuck in criminality, how to articulate, how to communicate, how to socially improve, because violence is nothing but a social issue. You know what I'm saying? So if you do that, unconsciously what you're gonna do is you're gonna elevate the articulation of the person. Now they can explain the emotional distress that they're going through, the social distress that they're going through. Now we can create policy that infuses the reality in which they live, and now we see systemic change and systemic growth. But until we do that, nothing, just because you add a new component to something that is already old doesn't make it innovation. Again, you have to take something away from each part for it to come together, for it to become innovation.
Johnny, who needs to hear this? I mean, so I've heard.
I feel like I just started preaching.
I've heard. Yeah, no, I've heard this.
I did. I feel like that. But I feel like I needed to say that.
I feel like you have. I feel like you have institutions, and we go back to this systemic. These institutions. You have institutions that are maybe perpetuating, that are perpetuating this, whether it's the privatization of mass incarceration as an industry or whatever it might be. Who needs to hear this message? Who needs to understand what needs to change when you've got actors that are working on the other side of this thing to keep it the way it is?
And so I'm gonna go to your first point, then I'm gonna answer that question. And so a mechanism of safety for whatever people, and when we talk about power, there's position power, there's referent power, there's all kinds of different powers, and normally people have position power or corrosive power, the position to punish you or reward you or to fire you or whatever that look like. And so if you're not in that position, then you feel like you have to code switch and do all of these different things in order to, one of my professors once told me, Johnny, it's about with 'em. And me, I'm from the streets. I'm like, bro, what's with 'em? He said, what's in it for me?
Yeah.
I said, oh, I've never heard that. And most people are going to try to keep their best interests at heart. And so if you have this position power over people, they're gonna code switch it, especially if you're a black and brown person, right? Who has a lack of resources and things like that. Then those are some of the things. I used to be a grassroots organizer. Like, that was my job. I went out and I was a grassroots organizer. But what Kyle is basically saying is something that I have started doing. I started doing last year. As a matter of fact, it was the Missouri Foundation for Health. So the expungement clinic was given an $800,000 grant from MFH, which is Missouri Foundation of Health. What they realized was we needed to do systems change work. Like, we need to change, and the first part of systems change work is changing narratives, mental mindsets, and these type of behaviors. And so when we start talking about what it's like to have systemic change or what it is to do systems change work, that's exactly what we're talking about. Because these institutions, I'll give you an example, and I'm just sitting here and pulling information or extracting information out of what Kyle was saying. Like, the other day I read that the Department of Corrections fiscal year 2024 budget was $942 million. $942 million. And so I'm going through the line items, and we get to education. $500,000.
Wow.
Right. But $942 million. And so, as you know, I got accepted into a doctoral program or whatever. And so the research question, when they asked me what it is that I wanted to do, I said, I want to research the direct correlation between incarceration and recidivism in education. Right. And so, as we have these institutions, and whether that's the Department of Corrections, whether that's our school systems, whether that's churches, whatever these institutions are, like, we have kept the status quo forever. And so when you ask who needs to hear this, hell, everybody. Everybody. Because in America, if it's one thing we're good at, it's keeping the status quo, right? We'll say, they criminals, they deserve to be locked up. And what Kyle said is absolutely right. That definition of rehabilitation is something that everybody needs to understand. To return you to a former state. Oh, so you want to tell me back to drug dealing and gangbanging? Is that the state that we're talking about? Like, how does that make sense to you? It only makes sense from a financial standpoint. When people get, and I think, and somebody could correct me on this, it's $31,290 for every inmate that's in the Department of Corrections in Missouri, right?
That's far too specific for me to want to correct you. I just want to be clear. Pretty sure you know that number.
And so when we start thinking it's $30,000 a head, right? In the Department of Corrections, it's $942 million. It's $280 million that we spend on recidivism, right? And so when we spend $50 million to house people, because Missouri has this reimbursement of people. If you're in jail on a felony conviction, the state of Missouri, the department can reimburse you for that. And then after your sentence and your time you await to go to whatever facility you're going to, they reimburse you for that too, at a tune of $50 million a year.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start,
like CCA.
Yeah, so when we start thinking about like who needs to hear this, and everybody, because the public has been sold on this false premise of what public safety actually is, right? And people will go out and they'll run campaigns, and they'll get out and they'll tell you like, man, this is about public safety, and we need to lock people up, and this is for your. And again, there's no study that you can find that there's a direct correlation between incarceration and anything to do with crime. You will find that there is a direct correlation. 49% of all individuals that are incarcerated have lived in poverty or extreme poverty. 79% of people that are in jails have a lack of education, right? You will find those correlations, right? And so when we start thinking about systemically, we have been sold a line that people perpetuate for their own whiffle. What's in it for me? I need to stay elected. We still need to get this $942 million, because if not, we got to fire people. If we don't have these task force and these joint task force, if we don't have the jump out boys and the alphabet boys, if we don't have all these, people gonna lose their jobs, right? And then those people who don't have that particular position power and they want their own with them, they're gonna code switch. They're just gonna go along with what's being said. They're gonna go to the meetings, even though they know it's BS. They're still gonna do it. And unless we need to provide direct services, and simultaneously we do need to do systems change work. There is a person in Kansas City who ran an organization who was a high-profile person, and his downfall started with, he called me and said, I just got evicted because they found a felony on my record. And he just kept repeating, I'm not a felon, my name, and I'm not a felon, and he kept saying his name. And, that is part of systems change, right? Hold the system up to itself, being able to identify how these things work together. We don't do a good job of that. Even in what Kyle said earlier about organizations, it's innovative because we are siloed. We rather talk about you than work with you. We just do.
It's a good conversation over a drink.
Right. We'll talk about you all day long. But when it comes to working together, boy, it's an issue. Mm-hmm. And so until we begin to dismantle these systems, provide innovation to what we believe is public safety and criminality, and actually help people, because we know, again, if you say 49% of people in jail come from poverty or extreme poverty, that lets you know people committing crimes because they poor, right? It's not rocket science. It's not, it ain't quantum mechanics or physics. It's they're poor, they commit crime. What Kyle said, what would you do to feed your, and I said that in that post, that LinkedIn post, what would you do to feed your, when I was appointed to this commission with the mayor, then I'm gonna get off my soapbox. And I ended up looking at some of the neighborhoods in Kansas City, and the average household income, I need to say that again, the average household income was like $4,620 something. if you lived in a house and your household income was less than $16,000, what is it that you really gonna do? And you have you don't have access to this education, you don't have access to these particular opportunities. You waking up and you born into this. It's not like you asked for it. It's the luck of the draw. Like you were born into this gunshots and the streets and people can't even the city don't even come cut the grass over there. Like you impoverished. What is it that people really expect from you? Like it's asinine for us to believe. In business, we're taught the theory of constraints. We're taught all of these, the bottleneck theory. We're taught, man, if something's wrong with the line, like we'll invest millions of dollars. You can be a green belt or black, when we need to fix this line. But when it comes to people, we completely forget about that. We completely forget.
That's the complete opposite of what Lean Six, you know what I'm saying, teaches is that.
Exactly.
It's not the person first, it's the system. But I want to define what you mean by system real quick. Because a lot of times when we talk systems, we think like systems is not a person. You know what I mean? A lot of times we think that. But procedures are walked out by people. You know what I'm saying? And who do I think this should go to? It's the people that work the systems, right? Because like I talked to like Chief Graves, right? Chief Graves is gung-ho on deflecting people from low-level nonviolent crimes into like community organizations that need the support though, right? But she ain't arresting everybody, you know what I mean? It's the people that function in the system though, right? It's the people's that their minds have to be elevated. And what I've learned is you don't have to hire somebody that wants the greatest thing of the world if the protocol is written right. You know what I mean? If the protocol is written in a way that if you don't do that thing, there's reprimand behind it. The reinforcer from psychology says that if the reinforcer is strong enough, then the behavior will shift. There's four reinforcers. There's positive, negative, extinction, and punishment. So if I'm gonna put a strong enough reinforcer, so the negative reinforcer is like an alarm clock going off, I hit the alarm clock stops, right? If I create enough pressure to make a person say, yo, I'm going to sit down and get to know you before I make that decision, right? Or get to understand your background or your cultural design before I make a decision about where I'm placing you, then we're going to get better results, right? So prime example is the PSI, right? So when you go to the feds, you get a PSI. Before there was a PSI, there was the judge would make the decision. Well, 99 crime bill comes down. Now we put mandatory minimums in there. Now we're locking up drug addicts for kingpin time. How do we know the difference? Well, let's put a pre-sentence investigation in. The pre-sentence investigation is going to ask you, has your mom been on drugs? Has your dad been on drugs? Has your da-da-da-da-da-da? Because we need to justify why we're about to give you this 20 years for you being a crackhead though, right? So they put the pre-sentence investigation piece in and forced the probation officers to have to build rapport, right? We know that it works though, right? But the thing is, we have to get to a place where we're comfortable and to the beginning, like, you gotta force people to do stuff. You know what I mean? Like you really got to do that in some stances though, right? And I feel like what Johnny's saying is 100% true. If we change the systems level change, then I think everything else will play out. But I think we need to be very clear on what we're saying, what part of the system that we want to change, right? Is it policy or is it the culture of the organization that you work in though, right? This is what I mean by system change. If the person that is incarcerating me, that is telling me that I have to go to my room every single day, believes that I am not able to change who I am, that's not you know what I mean? That's not gonna help me become something else. If every time I come in here, you ain't gonna be nothing but a criminal, or I'll see you next week, or I'll see you when you come back, or any of this language, you know what I'm saying? Like, no matter if the policy says on the wall, treat everybody like a human, if the CEO in majority prisons are in prison towns, so people are making money, to his point, off of incarcerating the people.
Yeah, it's an industry.
Then I can't. It's like a slave master. Like, If a slave master knew he was wrong, he wouldn't be a slave master. So I need to create rhetoric to make me feel like I'm right, though, right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the lowest level, the less intelligent people, elevate them over a class of people and make you feel better than them with your low-level rural area belief system, right? Now you get to be King Amidala, right? So now what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna continue to be King Amidala, even though the wall says I should treat people like humans. I'm just gonna do this because my self-preservation, my, you know what I mean? Like, we have to get into system change and culture change for the system to even work the way that we've positioned it to work.
Kyle, you said something earlier that I want to press on this point, though. You talked about the populations that you serve, or the population that you serve. And so I think there's a mindset amongst majority population that says the population you serve are the people you're trying to prevent from being criminalized, that you're trying to prevent from having violence impact them. You were talking about, no, we need to serve the other population. We need to serve the population, you know, that is coming from poverty, that has this criminality mindset, and so on. It feels like until we have that mindset shift, that actually the people we need to be serving are not the mass population, but it's the people who are in these situations. We're never going to get this solved.
They're going to infiltrate those areas. So this is what the mob would do. The mob would take their nephew at 16 years old. They'll tell him, you're going to work for the feds, but you're part of our family. They'll groom him. They'll make him great. They'll put him in there. He becomes a federal agent. Now he's an inside man for the mob, right? They'll play the long-term game for the infiltration piece, though, right? So if we want real change, 99 crime bill, and I'll put that out there, right? I don't think that Bill Clinton wanted to lock up every black person in America. I just really don't. That's just not from his policy, from his other policies, it doesn't align. I think he did what he thought was best. And sometimes we make bad decisions based on what we think is best, though,
Sure.
right? Well, imagine if somebody that was in his office was lived experience and was sitting next to him and saying, yeah, if you keep doing that, what you're gonna do is you're gonna take all the fathers away, and then you're gonna lead bastard children to create new policies for the culture that they live, and they're gonna create more crime. I don't think that's the best decision, though, right? We wouldn't have a 99 crime bill. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So what I 100% believe is, if I take the impoverished person, because this is my belief, I think the cure to cancer is in the hood. That's my promise, that's my belief. If I take somebody that is from the hood, educate them, build them up, strengthen them mentally, socially, emotionally, right? They'll be able to articulate to somebody like me and Johnny that has the opportunity to get into the room and say what we need to say. Proof of concept. When the George Floyd thing happened, what did both media outlets, Fox 4 and CNN, do? They put a microphone in front of somebody angry, mad, and pissed off, and then what each organization did was they talked about how stupid the person sounded, right? We keep asking people in crisis mode to make positive decisions about how their life should go in crisis mode. Stabilize them, educate them. They're gonna eventually make their way, and if they don't make it, they're gonna build systemically, their kid might make it, or their kid might make it, right? But in the end, the solution will come from the grassroots, from the problem. Anytime that we think that we're gonna make a solution for a problem that we can identify with, we're gonna build that, we're gonna morph the problem. You see what I'm saying? If I give you half of a solution, if I give you half of my problem, you're gonna give me half of a solution, right? I'm still gonna have to deal with the consequences of that. If you don't take all your medicine when you're sick, what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
The disease is gonna morph and grow. It's gonna get smart, right? Criminality and violence is the exact same way, right? You need somebody that understands how this sickness is making me sick to tell you that this is making me sick. We can't continue with the philosophy of I can study somebody from afar and make a decision from them. It doesn't. That's not gonna work no more.
Yeah, I used to do this thing. So I used to teach this class at a nonprofit. I used to be the vice president of this nonprofit, and I go in and I talk to about 30 guys reaching out. And then I started doing this on a larger scale. I have somebody take out a piece of paper, and I'll have them put point A and point B on it. And I'll say, what's the fastest way to get from point A to point B? And people will say, I'll draw a straight line. And I'll say, no, that's not how you do it. And so me, and you'd have to bear with me in this particular situation, is that if you could create a quantum singularity that could fold space, you could simultaneously exist in two different places, right? But if I tell that to somebody, and if I start talking about heavy water and uranium-235 that becomes uranium-236, and I'm saying this to the average person, they're gonna be like, man, what the hell are you talking about, right? And the thing is, like, if you have a problem in chemistry, you're gonna go to a chemist. If you have a problem with your car, you're gonna go to a mechanic. If you have a toothache, you're gonna go to a dentist. In public safety and crime prevention, it's the only space to where
that you do not.
you do not go and talk to the person and say, hey, what's really going? You just don't do that. And so it's baffling to me. And I did go, and I do have a bunch of, I have a bunch of degrees. I graduated top 1% of my class from Rockhurst University. And I sit there and I listen to people talk about, they'll say those people on the other side of the truth, and they'll make all these rationales and all these judgments. And I'm like, well, you never even talked to somebody over there. How do you solve a complex problem that you don't understand, right? And that's not, it's simply not possible. Yet we continue to do it over and over and over again. And it's actually, at first it becomes annoying, then it becomes something. Then you start becoming very upset. And then when you become upset, people will start talking about you
for being upset.
And
That's
it's really,
gaslighting.
and it's really like you sitting there like, you have no idea what you're talking. If you want to know why I sold drugs, ask me. Right. I got shot in the head. Ask me how I got shot in the head. I shot some people at a mall. Ask me why I did it. When the parade shooting happened, KCR asked me, could I go out and do an interview? And I kept hearing people saying, this ain't Kansas City. This is Kansas City. What Kansas City y'all talking about?
Right.
Like, how could someone do this? I said, I opened fire in a shopping center, right? The Dallas Cowboys were signing autographs. I got into it with a rival gang, and I opened fire in that mall. You can go read about it. It's online. And so I understand. So if you ask me, because you don't understand something, but that's the same thing as saying, I don't understand what a white dwarf is, Johnny. I don't understand what a red giant is. I don't, what is a solar mass? Like, you don't understand. You're not a physicist.
And then don't ask to be entertained.
So let me ask this question. I think you guys have answered this, but I want to be really explicit about this because I think this is sometimes where we end, where we like things stop. What advice would you guys give to civic leaders, policymakers, philanthropists on how to really activate change?
If you're not gonna talk with me in public, meet with me in private.
Oh, that's a whole different. Wow, you just took the can off the lid off a whole different issue. But I hear you.
I'm not palatable in certain areas. We're not palatable. We can go in certain areas. We look good when it's time to look good. We look good when we're talking about violence. We look good when we're talking about crime. We look good when we're talking about CVI. We're the guys that, you know what I mean? Like, how we dress and how we function, we're acceptable in our space. It's not necessarily going to be all the way true when you're sitting in front of the mayor, the congressman, you know what I'm saying, and all those people. Do you really want me to be there with my civil rights behind, you know what I'm saying all those things? If that's cool, play politics. I don't have a problem with you. I don't have a problem with you taking my data and eating steaks and lobster on your yacht. I don't care. I just need to fund my people so we can get where we're going. Have a conversation with me behind closed doors and let's hash it out, and then you go take my credit. I don't care about that. I just need the policy to be done so I can go serve my people. And when we get into those spaces and we are having those conversations, I don't mind you pushing back. But again, don't ask me to be entertained, ask me to understand. You know what I mean? People love hearing stories about all the gangster stuff that I did, but I'm not gonna keep bleeding all over the microphone telling you all the crazy street stuff that I did and how gangster I was and all the trauma stories that I had because you like watching Lifetime and seeing people that make it out of struggles, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, it sounds good to be a life story. I know that I made it out. I know that you could put a pin on me and say, look at the black boy that did the great thing when he was in poverty, right? But I'm more than that. I'm a strategist, I'm a thought partner. You know what I mean? Like let's sit in the room and let's talk about a solid strategy that's gonna make this economic shift. And if you wanna talk dollars about the city, then let's talk dollars, how the city can get dollars off of this. If you wanna talk public safety, let's talk public safety. But meet me at the table that makes change. Don't meet me at the bar stool. Don't meet me at the public forum at the round table so we taking pictures and stuff like that, and we're gonna push the needle because your agenda is to be with the person that looks like he's the one that's making the noise. Cool, I played that game before. I did that for 2 years. Yeah, I got funded off of it. Yeah, I made some partners. But now, at the position that I'm in right now, and how many grassroots organizations that I'm wanting to partner with and grow, I have a governmental expectation. And what I mean by governmental is like more like systems. And I have a community obligation. I don't want to be the organization that's been here for 20 years and then we look up and crime and violence is still the same and now I done lost all credibility and now I'm just another organization doing the next thing. I don't want to be that. I don't want to play that game no more, right? I don't want to lose my power in the community because there's two things that make politics move, and that's money and people, but people make money. And right now, my equity is in people. My community trusts that Kyle Hollins and the Lyrics Institution is going to do this work because I ain't let them down yet. And I got 6 years of work and community equity that's pushing this needle. I'm gonna maintain that, but I also don't wanna look up one day, right, 7 years, 10 years down the line, and my community is no longer with me because like, so what happens, and this is my issue, and I'm about to hit this rant for 2.2 seconds is, if we're talking about funders will not give you $100,000 to you easy unless you hit over 5 years. That's cool, I understand. I need to prove proof of concept. I need to prove that my financial standing is right. I need to prove that I'm gonna be here for the long run. I'm not gonna leave when I get the check. I understand that, totally understandable, right? But don't stop saying you're for public safety because there's only 2 organizations and people that are pushing the agenda, that are dealing with crime and violence, that are in the community, in the city right now, that have access. And let me be very clear. There are a bunch of organizations that do public safety and nonviolence work. But we're talking about access to people that are crime drivers and violence producers. That number is astronomically small. Our game isn't numbers. Our game is quantity, right? I mean, quality. So what I'm saying is, when I go to a fund and they're like, well, we need to get you guys to come together and we're gonna give it some time and let you guys go. Yeah, that works when you're talking about daycares because there's 50 of them. There's 2. We don't got time for you to figure out if we gonna save some lives. Because as a CEO that's working in grassroots area, the people that I'm serving are calling my phone. I'm not too big where the problem isn't calling me every night. I just got a call from a kid that said my partner got set up last night and he got killed at 2 a.m. He calling me at 5. I gotta talk him off the ledge from going to go kill somebody. You know what I'm saying? Now I got the police, one of the police, high-ranking police people calling me saying, please don't let that boy go kill nobody. So if you're not telling me that I gotta wait on this money, you're telling me that I'm gonna burn out and then you're not gonna have an organization later on anyway, though. You know what I'm saying? So we don't have time to wait for your change or you to believe in me. I need you to create data points and measures that say, how can we measure quickly? You know what I'm saying? How can we identify that this is not just a program, but an organization? That's not my responsibility to solve that for you. But if you're gonna make it my responsibility, then I'm gonna take that responsibility. But that doesn't qualify that I'm gonna be here in 10 years. I might only got 6, because you're gonna burn me out. Honest to God, truth.
Antoine's in the room.
Hey, he really
That's Bill Nye. That's the guy, though. Yeah, that's Bill Nye.
He really is, and so
Let me find out you about to answer that.
no, no. I am not, and so I think Cal is 100% accurate. I know what 2 organizations he's talking about. It's not really hard to tell. I got calls at 4:17 in the morning
About the same, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, and so I'll say this. If we're talking about what people, some action things that people can do, foundations need to feel the sense of urgency from those doing the work. Me and Kyle and our people are out here with no vests, no walkie-talkies, no anything, and we are actively engaged with those who are actually committing crimes out here. Like, and I'm not talking about they stole a can of pop and ran out the door. I'm talking about those who you see on the news, right?
Literally.
Yes, literally. And so there has to be a sense of urgency because people are dying. This isn't a game. This isn't politics. This is people. Is that me? I don't know.
Oh, it's me. It's my chain.
Oh, okay.
It's not a big deal or nothing.
Yeah. People. Is it my chain? Let me move this out the way. People. No, it can't be. Yeah, I don't know.
Everybody hold still. No.
And so people have to act with a sense of urgency. Additionally, those who have the resources, because I often tell people when we're in this space, I say there's a black guy running around with a trunk full of money handing it out to organizations, and we would go. And so often the people who have access to the resources or can write the checks don't look like us or have the same experiences. So you have to be able to understand that despite any academic achievements that you would say someone went to a 4-year institution, that those people are experts within their field, right? And we have to respect that. In other industries, people will be subject matter experts. We call them SMEs. Or we build these cross-functional teams and we do all that. And you've seen great organizations turn around. Toyota turned around like that. Samsung's president came in one day and said, I'm gonna set the whole Samsung electronics division down if we can't turn this around, right? And they brought in experts in their field. And as you know, I love Samsung electronics. I got 2 or 3 Samsung phones myself. And so until you realize that Kyle is an expert in his space, I am an expert, and we have lots of people who are experts in their space, right? Those are things that people need to recognize. The other thing, if people really wanted to do something, is understand what community and collaboration actually means, right? I wrote this in a post, and it was not a joke. We talk about collaboration all the time. It's not something that we really do, right? We have to be able to collaborate without somebody saying, you're gonna steal my program, or without all this other stuff that we're doing. We have to be able to collaborate because we have one goal in common. We have to understand what community means. Kansas City is one of the most segregated cities that I've ever lived in my life, right? We still talking about the dividing line of truth. And people say I live in the city or the city or North Kansas City or this or that. And I'm like, man, what are you talking? This is Kansas City.
From Kansas City, yeah.
The only time collectively I see Kansas City come together, and no offense to nobody, is during the Chiefs and when the Royals is actually winning. Like, those are the times where I see the city actually act like one unified city. And I'm like, how is it that how do you plan to solve these problems? And then it's one of those, the other side only cares if something happens to somebody that they, like, we went to the plaza and XYZ happened, and now you actually care about what's happening because you don't understand how that relates to you and your life. And we have to stop doing that. It's like, I'm gonna just say this because for black people, it's like when you go to weddings and funerals. Like, man, I ain't seen you since such and such died. We got to stop coming together for just weddings and funerals. Like, we actually got to get together at some point and talk to each other. Additionally, and I think what Kyle said is one of the most extremely underrated yet most important things that could be done that really no one's doing: the culture. We have not taken a look at the culture in a whole and the subculture in which people operate, right? And it's something that somehow it is growing and living and morphing and taking over people's lives, yet we don't do anything about it. We know some people don't even know it exists. They're like, wait a minute, why are they doing, why? If you look at Omaha, Memphis, Houston, Chicago, there's these commonalities between these subcultures and these groups. And so you have to start thinking like, how did we get there? And the first person besides myself, the only person who has said that in a public setting is Cal. How are we can't be the only two guys in America that's sitting here thinking like, hey, man, there's something about to, like, we've got to actually do something about it. We can't be the only people thinking this. And so at some point, people have to understand that code that's been created and how it was created, right? Because to me, when you talking about access and opportunity, when I was younger, to be successful, you had to be a rapper, a football player, basketball player, do all these other things. The only other successful person I seen was my partner across the street who sold a bunch of dope. We poor.
Yeah.
My mama worked 3 jobs. She ain't never home. My daddy smoked crack. I'm seeing dude across the street, man, he got cars and more important, he got food. And he got all of these things. And I said, man, how you get this? And he showed me a little baggie full of this white substance. This all I need to make some money. Yup. And so America has constructed that. It was a design. When you talk about design thinking, it was designed that way, and it's created this subculture that people get trapped in, and no one's addressing it. We built it, right? And I ain't saying we built because we got stuck in it. We built it, right? We need to solve it. We need to talk about it. We need to go out there and say, hey, this is what's really, really happening. And the last thing I'll say, because I want to get off my soapbox. I don't want to go on too long.
Yeah, man, it's 8:21, bro.
My fault. How you
I'm gonna talk stuff because I can.
Yeah. The last thing I think is like those who really. It's one thing to say those who are closest to the problem have the solutions, but you have got to really fund these efforts. We got this thing to where, like Hal was saying, it's cool, man, I done been on TV and the news, on the front page of I done been all kind of stuff, but where that change at? You want me, I can't help nobody if I ain't got no money either. Like, you have got to start funding. And when I say funding, you know, the other day because I get reverting to this LinkedIn post that I wrote, I looked at that bike proposal. It was $400 million in total. $400 million. Kyle, what could you do with $400 million?
I just need 28. I just need 28.
Yeah.
Right, you see what I'm saying?
You know what I can do with 28?
Yeah.
And so when we start thinking about like what it is that our values and what we care about is displayed through our money. If you care about something, and I'm gonna just be honest, and I know people who voted for this, the bike lanes, I seen one dude riding a bike. Now, somebody could correct me if maybe some other people seen people riding the bike. I seen like one person riding a bicycle. I know 100 people who done got killed, right? And so until we invest in things that we believe in. And if you start looking at the investment in these particular organizations, the investment in both my organization and Cal's organization, who actually are going to work, if we start looking at those particular investments, one can deduce that you really don't care. Because if you care, you show that with your wallet. Yeah, you follow the money. And so we have got to get to the point to where, you know, and I hate to use the old cliche, put your money where your mouth is. If we care about the 183 or 184 people that died last year, or or almost 600 people who got shot last year, we would put our money where our mouth is, and we, and this is the last thing I said. Now I feel comfortable saying this because I said it on the podcast. We have normalized failure, and that's simply what it is. And we cannot. We should no longer stand. We shouldn't stand for that. We've normalized failure, and we shouldn't stand for that.
Gentlemen, thank you. I don't mean thank you for the work you do, because I know you don't do it for the thanks. But thank you for sharing, and thank you for coming up here and talking with me. I appreciate that. Let us know, what can we all be doing? I think you've shared some great ideas for folks to think about. But let us know what we all can be doing, because for me, the mindset shift has to be the people we serve are not the people who are worried about the problem. We have to serve the people who are the root of where these things are coming from, and the people who've been most impacted are the people who are, have that criminality, that violence that's in their life, and they're, like you said, they're born into it in many instances. So we need to change. We need to change that culture. Absolutely. For this to become put your money where your mouth is thing. So thank you guys for helping educate. Thank you guys for helping raise awareness and doing.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So absolutely appreciate it. Yeah, definitely. Give me a hand, folks.